Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 1880, and today's date is May 29th, 2019, and the title of the episode is Central Bank Resignations Transition Moving Forward. Now, this is the time of year that most of us have a big old clear out. We get rid of all the stuff that's collected through the winter, hidden away in the back of a cupboard or a file cabinet. There might be a gold mine. Noble Gold can show you how to blow the financial dust off those files, revitalize the dead money, and catapult your retirement savings into orbit. Just for May, to celebrate Memorial Day, they are offering a solid silver Trump 2020 coin and a 10-ounce silver bar for anyone rolling over an IRA or cash deal over $20,000. Talk to the team over at Noble Gold today and call 877-646-5347. Protect your retirement by investing in a gold IRA. Let's get into the economic collapse financial news. Now, as we can see, the entire world is starting to wake up. We're seeing it in Europe. We see it in the UK. People are voting for the Brexit Party. They're moving away from the elite. We see it in Australia, we see it in Hungary, we see it in Poland, we see it in Sweden, we see it in Italy, and we are seeing it in France. This is the beginning of a movement. Now remember, this plan is not always straightforward. Sometimes it has to go around curves. Sometimes it has to go backwards, then forwards. But the ultimate goal of the plan is to get rid of those treasonous individuals, to get rid of the people in the swamp, and then go after the central bank system. And the central bank system, well, it needs to be taken over. The central bank system needs to be controlled. There is a swamp living in the central bank system. Remember, within the central bank system, you have those individuals that are good and those individuals that are bad, just like in government. It's the same exact thing. And what is happening right now is that Trump, the Patriots, they are pushing their agenda to have these people either fired, if they can, or have them resign. And this is exactly what we are seeing. Now, since the UK is looking to break away from the EU, other countries are waiting and standing in the wings and hoping that the UK breaks free and the UK is prosperous. Because once this happens, other countries are going to follow. Why? Because the EU right now is having a huge amount of trouble. Look at Germany, for instance. Germany has reported that its economy appears to have finally hit a major pothole as German unemployment unexpectedly surged for the first time in almost 2 years. Because why? Because everything is starting to slow down. This has nothing to do with tariffs. This has nothing to do with the trade deals. This has to do with the central bank system. And now the countries are feeling it. Remember, the central bankers, they were trying to cover this up with some type of an event. They're all exposed right now. And there's no place for people to look except at the central bank system. And once the UK moves away, it is going to be game over for the central bank system. And they know this. This is why they're going to try to stop it and do whatever they possibly can to make sure that it doesn't happen. But I do believe the people are going to speak up and people are going to push for it. And we're going to see this happen in many other countries. And why don't they want this to happen? Because their system right now is completely falling apart. If you look at the United States, and I know there's other countries like Canada, Australia, throughout Europe, there are major housing bubbles. Now, out of wallstreet.com, he does a fantastic job creating these graphs. You want to read the whole article, you can go right over to Wall Street. I interviewed him before, and he's looking at all the different housing bubbles in different cities in states. And what he's done, he's taken the housing bubble number one, this was 2006, 7, 8, 9, and is comparing it to the current housing bubble, which we are in now. This is housing bubble number 2. So if we look at Seattle right now, at the top of housing bubble number 1, we were at an index of about 190. Now, if we look at housing bubble number 2, we are now at an index of 260. This is a 27% gain. Now, of course, since the Fed started to raise rates and they started to tighten, what did we see? We saw the housing bubble deflate a little bit. Now, that was Seattle. Now, if we look at San Francisco, we see housing bubble number one. We see the index was around 185, 190. And the housing bubble number two, which is today, the present, the housing index is around 265. That's a 35% increase. If we look at New York condos, back then, the housing bubble number one index was around 230 or so. It is now at 270. That's an 18% increase. If we look at Los Angeles, housing bubble number one was around 270, and we're topping 280. We're exactly where we were. The other bubbles are much higher, but Los Angeles is exactly where we were in housing bubble number one, pretty darn close. And there are many other cities that are going through this. This is not isolated. Now remember, the central bank created these bubbles. Why? They were pumping up the economy. How did they create them? Low interest rates and stimulus. And when they started to tighten and when they started to raise the interest rates, the bubble started to deflate. They were going to pop, but Trump is reversing this right now. And he has to do this because he needs to complete the trade deals. He needs to prepare the United States for the transition. Now, Trump right now, he has made Huawei the biggest story in tech right now by banning it from doing business with U.S. companies. Now, Trump is using Huawei as a negotiating tactic to focus on China's attention on American discontent with the existing trade relationship between the two countries. China, they have very few options, not many good options available to tackle this problem. What does China have left to retaliate with? It's already imposed tariffs on the few classes of goods for which it wants to protect its internal market, and it's excluded American internet giants like Google, Facebook. So what can China realistically threaten to do as a countermeasure? Retaliation is particularly risky because China's economy relies on ever-increasing trade with the world, as evidenced by the massive Belt and Road Initiative to develop land and sea routes for faster transport of goods. And Huawei, though a privately held entity, has been very helpful in procuring high-value overseas business with its lead in network infrastructure, 5G equipment, and most recently, premium smartphones. Now, Xi Jinping and his administration, to combat what Trump is doing with Huawei, they've turned to rare earth minerals, and they're trying to use this to try to pressure Trump into going along with what they want. Now remember, rare earth minerals, they're essential to every smartphone, laptop, hybrid car, practically anything more advanced than a gas oven. Now, rare earths are not the secret weapon China imagines them to be. They're not all that rare. And the response to Beijing hoarding its supply would be production becoming economically viable and ramping up elsewhere. And the ultimate outcome would be fewer jobs and fewer exports for China. And I do believe that Trump already prepared for this. I know there are people out there saying that China's going to use this and they cornered the market, but there's many other countries that have these minerals. And I believe Trump has already made deals with these countries to supply these minerals so the companies can use them for smartphones, laptop, hybrid cars, etc. So I believe what Trump has done here, he has trapped China and he's sitting and waiting it out until they say, okay, listen, we have nothing. We're going to have to negotiate. And China will come to the table. Just like all the other countries where he's waiting for a phone call, he knows how to box these individuals in. This has been his approach throughout business. This is what he does. He doesn't get excited about it. He doesn't scream and yell. He plans it out and makes sure that they have no way of escaping. And once he puts the screws to them, he waits it out. He makes them sweat. Yes, it seems like they might have the upper hand. They scream and yell and say, we're not going to deal with you. Never, ever, ever. And then all of a sudden, it starts breaking down. And they come to the table. I mean, think about what happened in North Korea. Think about Venezuela. Think about Iran. Well, North Korea, there was a peace deal. Venezuela, the opposition is in Oslo with the Maduro government, and they're talking. Kind of odd. And then we have Iran. Well, guess what? Something is happening there. We'll be talking about that in just a minute. Now, what's very interesting is that the U.S. Federal Reserve market czar, he decided to step down. Simon Porter, who runs the Fed Systems market operation, is stepping down at the end of the week. And Richard Zina, head of the Federal Reserve of New York Financial Services Group, he is also stepping down. Now, this is a lot of resignations because we had a couple in the Federal Reserve. We have some in the New York Federal Reserve. And I believe we're going to see a lot more happen. And Q has always told us that the entire Federal Reserve system, it is going to be restructured. How do you restructure it? You remove those bad individuals and you put in those people that are going to do what you want them to do. And it starts at the top with the Federal Reserve. And this is exactly what we see happening. Trump is trying to get those people in there that are gold bugs, that like sound money, that are going to restructure the Federal Reserve System. Again, the plan is to remove the central bank. The plan is to take over the central bank. The plan is to restructure the central bank. The plan is to return the creation of currency back to the people. And it's going to have to be done. Because if you really think about it, can society today continue on with the dollar continually devaluing and the debt levels rising? Is it possible? If we just let the free market set the interest rates, if we let the free market adjust to today's economy, will it work? No, it won't. Why do you think the Federal Reserve has been controlling the interest rates? Why do you think the Federal Reserve and other central banks have been controlling the stock market? Why do you think they've been controlling? And I'm talking about the deep state when they were in power. Trump has the magic wand now. He knows how to control this. But why do you think they were controlling all this? Why do you think they needed to control it? Why do you think they needed stimulus? Because without it, if they let the free market do what the market normally does and let the interest rates rise, what happens? The whole thing implodes. Their system cannot operate in an open and free market. And the only way to get out of this is to remove us from their system. So Trump knows this. The Patriots know this. And their plan is to move us out of a central bank system because they want the system to be open and free. They don't want an entity controlling it, saying, okay, now we're going to lower interest rates. Okay, now we're going to raise interest rates. Because that gives them an enormous amount of power. Oh, you know what? We're going to add stimulus. We're going to cut off stimulus. Think about the power they have and the ability to control governments with that power. This is why the Patriots are going to remove the central bank. They need to get rid of that power structure. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared.